You barely talk. Some people hear that everywhere. At family dinners, at work, in meetings, in new groups. And after a while, people start treating it like a fact about you. Like you are quiet everywhere, with everyone, all the time. But that is not always true. Because for many people, it is not that they cannot speak. It is that they do not want to speak in the wrong environment. They are not empty. They are not boring. They are not always shy. They are careful about where their voice goes. The same person who says almost nothing in one room can become completely different in another. Expressive, funny, opinionated, loud. They can talk for hours, but not with everyone. Because communication is not only about personality, it is about comfort, trust, connection, and whether the person in front of you feels safe enough to receive the real version of you. Sometimes, the real question is not, do I like talking? Sometimes the real question is, do I feel like myself here? And if the answer is no, silence can feel more honest than forcing words that do not belong. One reason you may speak less around certain people is the energy of the room. You can feel when something is off. Forced conversations, fake laughter, people trying too hard to seem interesting, someone turning everything into a performance, a group where nobody is really listening, only waiting for their turn to speak. And in that kind of environment, something in you pulls back. Not because you do not know how to join in, not because you are socially broken, but because you notice the performance. You notice when people are speaking just to be seen, not to connect. So instead of matching that energy, you step inward. You observe. You let the room show you what it is before you decide how much of yourself it deserves. Some people think silence means nothing is happening inside you. But often, silence means you are paying attention to too much. You notice tone. You notice who interrupts. You notice who changes around certain people. You notice who makes others feel small. You notice who is real and who is playing a role. And while everyone else is filling the air, you are quietly deciding whether this is a place where your words should live. There is a kind of social filter some people carry. Not in a cold way, not in a judgmental way. It is just automatic. Before you speak, something in you checks the room. Is this real? Is this safe? Will my words be understood here? Will they matter here? Or will they be ignored, judged, twisted, or turned into something they were never meant to be? You may not ask those questions out loud, but some part of you asks them anyway. And if the answer feels wrong, you limit what you say. You answer what needs to be answered. You stay polite. You smile when necessary. But you do not fully enter the conversation because deep down, you know the difference between speaking and giving someone access to you. And not every space deserves that access. But with the right people, everything changes. Around people you trust, you are not the same version strangers see. You loosen up. You joke without rehearsing at first. You share your thoughts without editing every sentence. You speak freely because you are not busy protecting yourself inside. That is why people sometimes say, "I thought you were quiet," or "You were so silent before. Now you talk all the time." But that is not inconsistency. That is context. You did not suddenly become someone else. You simply entered a space where you did not have to shrink. You found people who did not make your words feel risky. And when a person feels safe, their real personality has room to breathe. That is what many people miss. Quietness is not always the absence of something. Sometimes it is the presence of protection. People open up when they feel safe from judgment, safe from rejection, safe from being mocked, safe from being ignored, safe from being misunderstood. If you have ever shared something honestly and watched someone twist it, dismiss it, or use it against you later, then you understand why silence can become a shield. Not because you are weak, but because you learned that not every person handles honesty with care. Sometimes staying quiet is not fear, it is self-respect. It is the part of you saying, I am not handing my inner world to someone who will not know what to do with it. And often, that caution does not come from nowhere. Maybe you used to talk more. Maybe there was a time when you shared easily. You explained your thoughts. You told stories. You tried to be part of the conversation. But over time, things happened. You were interrupted too many times, dismissed too many times, not taken seriously too many times, made to feel like your voice was too much, or not enough, or somehow always wrong. And slowly, you learned. You learned to pause before speaking. You learned to keep some thoughts to yourself. You learned that not every room deserves the deepest parts of your mind. That is not withdrawal. That is wisdom learned over time. The kind that appears after too many moments where opening your mouth changed absolutely nothing. There is a difference between hiding yourself and saving yourself for places where you can actually be heard. Another reason you may speak less is that some conversations take more from you than they give. Some interactions leave you tired in a way that is hard to explain. You walk away feeling heavier, more tense, more empty. And it is not always because something terrible happened. Sometimes it is just the emptiness of the exchange. Talking just to talk, laughing just to be accepted, listening to negativity that goes nowhere, being around people who make every interaction feel like pressure. And if you are sensitive to that, you notice it quickly. You can feel when a conversation is draining you while it is happening, so you conserve your energy. You do not join in just to prove you can. You do not spend your voice on something that leaves you feeling hollow afterward. Because eventually, you understand something many people ignore. Not every interaction adds something to your life. Some of them subtract. And once you can tell the difference, you become much more careful about where you invest your voice. Another deep reason is authenticity. You do not want to fake interest. You do not want to laugh just to be accepted. You do not want to act more outgoing than you feel. You do not want to pretend a connection is real when it is not. And that can make you misunderstood. People may assume you are shy, or rude, or cold, or that you think you are better than everyone. But often, it is not ego, and it is not fear. It is alignment. If you feel connected, you speak. If you do not, your silence tells the truth before your mouth does. For some people, pretending to be enthusiastic when they are not feels like a small betrayal of themselves. And at some point, they stop paying that price just to fit in. Then there is the habit of observing before opening up. When you enter a new environment, you may not rush into conversation. You watch first. You listen to how people talk to each other. You notice how they treat one another. You notice how they react. You are trying to understand the social dynamic before deciding how much of yourself to show. That makes your words more intentional. You are not speaking just to fill uncomfortable silence. You speak when it feels meaningful, or when you feel comfortable enough to be exactly who you are. Another truth is this: You may not feel the need to be liked by everyone. You would rather be misunderstood by some people than perform a version of yourself that feels false. You would rather be completely yourself with a few people than adjust your personality to be accepted by many. Because one real conversation can mean more than 100 shallow ones. And true connection is not built by the number of words people exchange. It is built by how real it feels to be there. But being quiet does come with a cost. When you do not explain yourself, people often fill the space with assumptions, and most of the time, those assumptions are wrong. They assume you are upset. They assume you are judging them. They assume you are bored. They assume you have no confidence. They assume you are difficult to know. When really, they have only seen you in a place where you did not feel open. And correcting everyone can feel exhausting. Because explaining yourself to someone who does not want to understand can feel like wasting words. So sometimes, you let the misunderstanding sit there. Not because it does not hurt, but because you know the difference between someone who is confused and someone who is not interested in understanding. And you would rather save your energy for someone who is actually willing to listen. It is also important to understand that silence does not always feel awkward to you. For some people, silence is normal. It is peaceful. It is not a failure in the conversation. It is not something that needs to be filled every few seconds. You can sit beside someone without talking and still feel connected. A quiet drive, a quiet meal, a quiet evening, and feel deeply comfortable. Because connection is not measured by how much is said. It is measured by how real the presence feels. You can talk for hours with one person and feel completely alone. And you can say almost nothing with another person and feel deeply understood. That is why silence is not always distance. Sometimes silence is trust. Sometimes it means I do not have to perform here. Sometimes it means your presence does not require me to become someone else. And that kind of comfort is rare. But when a quiet person does speak, it often carries weight. Because their words are not usually thrown out carelessly. They have been considered, chosen, measured against whether they are worth saying. So when they say, I am not okay, they are probably not just having a small bad moment. When they say, you matter to me, they mean it. When they say, I trust you, that is not casual. When they say, I believe in you, they have already thought about it. Their words are not decoration. They are decisions. So when someone says, you talk so little, what they are often seeing is only one side of you. They are seeing you in a space where you do not feel fully comfortable, fully connected, or fully understood. They are seeing the guarded version, the observing version, the version of you that has not yet been given a reason to come forward. Because the truth is simple. You are not quiet everywhere. You are quiet where you do not feel like being fully yourself. You do not talk little because you have nothing to say. You talk little because you have learned that the wrong environment can silence even the most expressive person. And somewhere along the way, you decided that your words are not meant to be scattered everywhere. They are meant to be placed where they can be heard, where they can be respected, where they can land with someone who actually knows how to listen. Because sometimes the reason someone stays quiet says less about who they are and much more about the space they are standing in.